A cheap and damaging International Women's Day exhibit has been condemned for making Jack the Ripper into a woman. The London Dungeon changed the name of the infamous murderer to Jackie the Ripper to celebrate the landmark day. But Refuge, a women's and domestic abuse charity, criticized the dungeon for its controversial decision, My London reports. The attraction, which draws thousands of tourists every year, asked, was the notorious killer actually a woman? And headed the exhibit, Jack Becomes Jackie the. It features the story of Mary Piercy, a convicted murderer who was named a Jack the Ripper suspect by author William Stewart in 1939. What do you make of the exhibit? Have your say in the comments section. Painting of the discovery of a Jack the Ripper victim in Whitechapel, London, 1888, image. Corbis via Getty Images. A more conventional portrayal of Jack the Ripper. A London Dungeon spokesperson said, "With men often stealing the spotlight when it comes to the ghastly and gory crimes, we wanted to give ladies their dues for International Women's Day. Rather than the usual honoring, we've given the day a London Dungeon twist while telling a story that many may never have heard before." A release for the event said they are challenging all traders and peasants brave enough to come face to face with femme fatale Mary Piercy, a real-life suspect in the Jack the Ripper investigation, to see if they can survive the horrors of Whitechapel and escape with their organs intact. But Kim Manning Cooper, Refuge head of communications, told My London the exhibit trivializes the murder of women by a serial killer, and the timing couldn't be worse, in the wake of the anniversary of Sarah Everard's death. A street in Whitechapel, the last crime of Jack the Ripper, from Le Petit Parisien, 1891, image. Corbis via Getty Images. Most read. Pasha Lee dead. Ukrainian actor who quit to sign up for country's defense is killed. Well-known TV couple unrecognizable from unearthed 90s wedding photo to mark 25 years. Ukraine's heroic President Zelensky echoes Winston Churchill in historic address to MPs. She said, "I had to read this statement more than once to check it was real." Not only does it trivialize the systematic murder of women by a serial killer, but it makes a mockery of a day that is supposed to be about celebrating women's achievements. In England and Wales, 2 women a week are killed by a current or former partner, and 1 in 4 women will suffer from domestic abuse at some point in their 125 women have been murdered by men since Sarah Everard was killed by a serving police officer, just 1 year ago. This cheap marketing stunt uses very damaging language around gender-based violence which we know to have real-life consequences. Violence against women has never been higher on the public and political agenda, and the London Dungeon is deciding to spend International Women's Day on. It could not be more tone-deaf if it tried. International Women's Day 2022 to 7 things remarkable women have invented through history. When is International Women's Day, what it's for and how it's celebrated? Met police officer Wayne Couzens staged a fake COVID arrest to abduct marketing executive Sarah before raping and killing her in March last year. He was given a whole life term after pleading guilty in October. The murder sent shockwaves through the capital and kickstarted a nationwide discussion on women's safety. Responding to Refuge, a London Dungeon spokesperson said, "Jack the Ripper has been a featured show in the London Dungeon for more than 30 years as part of London's darkest history. The introduction of a female actress taking on the role, for 1 day only, was based on a genuine theory about who Jack the Ripper could have been that we wanted to explore in more depth for visitors. Our intention was to give airtime to an existing and well-documented theory and was not intended to offend. The London Dungeon apologizes sincerely for any offense caused. On International Women's Day, a global date to celebrate women, London Dungeon planned to dispel the myths of the fairer sex and give murderous females the recognition they deserve this International Women's Day. The attraction will feature the story of femme fatale Mary Piercy, detailing how she was convicted of murdering her lover's wife, Phoebe Hogg, and their child Triggy. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer who murdered mainly female prostitutes in the Spitalfields and Whitechapel area in 1888. He was known for mutilating their bodies and removed the internal organs of at least 3 of his victims. The definitive number of victims has never been confirmed, but there are at least 5 which are widely attributed to him. Several letters were received by the media and Scotland Yard from individuals purporting to be the murderer. The name Jack the Ripper originated in a letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer, which was eventually disseminated in the media. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists in an attempt to heighten interest in the story. It's also never been determined how long Jack the Ripper was active for, though the time frame is thought to be between 1888 to 1891. Mary's crimes put her in the frame as a suspect several decades after her death. She was hanged for her crimes in Newgate Prison on 2 December 23, 1890. She was considered to be a possible suspect for the Ripper crimes by author William Stewart in 1939. Read more. Woman spends £1,500 on tattoos of killers including Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. Read more. Jack the Ripper's identity is finally exposed from the killer's own diary.